Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the Glue Guys podcast, episode 24, the Kobe Bryant episode, and we are here with a very, very special guest. Some call him South Beach Diet, but that's only if I'm whooping his ass in fantasy. Some call him Big John Reiter. Reiter, why don't you tell us how you're doing today, man?
Hey Ethan, man, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Hey, when I got the text from Chad, I told my wife, it's like, hey, I'm getting the call from the big leagues. I know you go to the gym on Sunday mornings, but I need you to cancel it. All right, I'm going. This is my shot. So I'm very honored to be here. Thank you so much, guys.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Chad, how you doing this week?
Doing good right now. We're recording this on Sunday morning, February 2nd. I always like to give the timestamp of kind of when we record because you never know when stuff is going to change in sports. A prime example, obviously, that Luka Doncic trade that happened last night. I was on the phone with someone till about 1:30 in the morning, just breaking down the trade, and we were like trying to figure it out. Not going to do the whole conversation here because we're actually going to record a smaller mini podcast after this to dive more into that. So we call that a tease in the profession. But Johnny was someone we couldn't tease beforehand because I think the hype would have gotten too big. I think it would have gotten too big. Expectations would have been too high. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling ready to go, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, definitely very, very exciting. Today is going to be focusing really on the NFL. It's really going to be an overview of the season, the 2024-25 season. I don't really technically know if they call it that, but since it stretches in both years, we are going to refer to it as such. So we got a couple of NFL season awards that are a little bit off the wall. You know, you have in the NFL your Offensive Rookie of the Year, your Defensive Player of the Year, your MVP. Those are irrelevant. All right. These are the awards that people really, really want to know about. And, you know, kind of getting into character, of course, me and Reiter were focusing more on the negative awards, but he did come through with some more positive awards eventually. So why don't we start, of course, again, because it's me, with the NFL season awards with the biggest disappointment of the season. And since you are the guest, Ryder, why don't you get us kicked off?
Oh, pressure's on. But look, this to me was the hardest award to choose because there were just too many disappointments. All right. Um, I'm looking left
Starting
and
off
right
with a
and changing
bang.
my mind. Um, I'm gonna go a little bit left field. I'm going with the 2024 Jacksonville Jaguars. All right.
Nice,
This is the
nice.
team that, for two seasons in 2022 and 2023, they went 9-8. 2022, they went the AFC South. Doug Peterson is the coach. Trevor Lawrence is supposed to be the next big thing. Then last year, CJ Stroud, the Houston Texans, kind of come out of nowhere, and they take the title. But it's not like the Jacksonville Jaguars were a bad team. They're still 9-8. Uh, Big hype coming into this season. I did some digging for some preseason predictions for the 2024 seasons. They had the Jaguars winning 10, 11 games this year, and they finished 4-13. Huge, huge disappointment. Uh, Trevor Lawrence, I know he was dealing with a lot of injuries this year. He played in 10 games, but I mean, 11 touchdowns, seven interceptions. Where is the step up? And it's not like they don't have a receiving core. Um,
Yeah, no
and
kidding.
then what's going on with Travis Etienne? Tank Bigsby is out carrying him. I didn't understand what happened in Jacksonville this year. I thought Doug Peterson should have been fired. I mean, they started 0-4 or 2-6 at some point, but he should have been fired by Thanksgiving. He gets blown out twice, once by Buffalo. It's a ridiculous loss, I believe 52-6 to the Lions. And granted, the Lions were the number one seed, but it was just ugly for the Jacksonville Jaguars. 31st overall defense, 32nd in pass defense. Man, 27 tied for 27th in scoring defense. Only 9 forced turnovers. The only team in the NFL with single-digit turnovers in this season. So I give it to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I actually thought they were going to compete against the Houston Texans for that AFC South title. I, there's always that second year drop off, and there was for CJ Stroud. So I thought, hey, perfect opportunity for them to kind of take over. But let's not just blame this on the offense and Trevor Lawrence. Everything was bad. And Chad and I already talked about this, the whole Trent Baalke situation and Khan as an owner. It's just not working out. And they're going to, I guess, try to blow the front office again. You hire a coach and then you fire the GM to get a new GM. What is this? What is going on in Jacksonville? So yeah, I know that in the past Jacksonville disappointing was a normal thing, but this year to me they were the most disappointing team anything in the NFL with some honorable mentions for Kirk Cousins and Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, so
the Anthony Richardson thing we could do a half an hour on, I know, but we'll save that one.
But here's the thing with Anthony Richardson though, is is that disappointing? Because for me, it's I thought everyone that knew something about football could recognize that this dude was a huge play merchant and wasn't ever going to be he's gonna have the craziest "he was a problem" tape of all time here in 10 years. Whatever the 2035 version of Twitter is gonna be, it's gonna be dude, Anthony Richardson's top 10 plays of his career were the best of all time, but he just so happened to throw 145 picks in 25 career starts. So I thought that's always what he was gonna be, but
I will say, John, not to put you on the spot, but you were arguably his biggest fan, or one of, coming into his rookie year, and I will hold my hand up as well. By going into this season, I was like, you know what? I really thought he had. I thought he had a chance to kind of be what people were this is why you draft the guy with the extremely high ceiling. The guy with. Especially with what the Colts were at the time when they took him, they were a team that kind of had nothing they had nothing at the quarterback position. Had just come off benching Matt Ryan, when he was pushing 40. So had nothing. They had gone with a bunch of different plans. The pick made sense to me. I thought the hype was there. The potential was actually there. You saw it in spurts. I know in that rookie year he played, I think, 4 games, but he only played a half. Or more than a half in 2 of them, which was crazy. But I thought in that spurt, he showed enough to kind of be maybe there's something there. So it's obviously was a bad pick now. They're probably in the market for a new quarterback at any time. But you were not alone when it came to the Anthony Richardson hype train coming into this year.
I mean, when they went back-to-back, Rivers, then Ryan, then...
No, you
Flacco.
No, you forgot the Wentz. Don't forget the Wentz year.
My bad. The Wentz year where they were hey, all you got to do is beat Jacksonville at home. Was it that year?
Yeah, when they were awful. When they were horrible.
Yeah, beat Jacksonville at home to go to the playoffs and just lose instead.
He was nah.
Yeah, so all right, so we got the Jacksonville Jaguars as our first, contender. Maybe we could do that with we each put up a nominee, and maybe we can all come to a consensus.
Real quick on Jacksonville, they're one of those teams where it's weird. Every 5 to 10 years, they have one season of hope. They had the one Blake Bortles year where they lose to the Patriots in the AFC title game. Everyone knows they should have made the Super Bowl, but the Patriots cheated, of course. Then they have
Chad says year, as a Chiefs apologist.
Yeah, absolutely. They have that year a couple years ago, John, that you were talking about, where they're 9-8. They win the division.
Beat the Chargers.
They have that crazy win in the playoffs against the Chargers. Yep. Everyone's Trevor Lawrence is the guy I'd start my franchise with. He was the right pick. No, seriously.
I know.
I was gonna say it's funny to say now, but that's where they were.
24 months ago?
I was going to say, we're talking about 20 months ago. They were the hottest team in the NFL. Doug Peterson was a great coach, and now they got Duval coming in, and it's like, look, I don't know. Ethan and I, we spent a lot of time talking about this. I can't remember if it was actually on the podcast or this is in a conversation, but in 2025 to be like, hey, yeah, this is the blueprint to get a good head coach, bullshit. Throw it out the window because it just doesn't exist. Every good coach in the NFL kind of has their own profile. Perfect example, Dan Quinn this year. The league for the last 10 years has trended young, offensive mind. You get an older, defensive-minded head coach comes in, does a great job. So I'm not sitting here saying Liam Cohen is not going to be a good coach, but just the feeling around the Jaguars right now has to be a bottom 5 feeling in the NFL. And when 2 years ago they were arguably in the top 5 for that. So
he looks
it's an
too much
incredible
like Max Duggan for me to be excited about him. To be honest, like when I saw him, I thought it was Max Duggan. I was like, how the hell do they have a 25-year-old head coach? So Chad, what is your 2024-2025 biggest disappointment in the NFL?
I think it has to be the San Francisco 49ers. The thing with me when I did it is I specifically wanted to look at 2 things. One, division record.
Okay.
Because I think that, like in the NFL, and all of us have talked about it before, in the NFL, division, like how you are compared to your division, matters so much more than in any other sport. Like
it's really all
both
that matters.
Exactly. Like it's literally how the teams talk about it. When you talk about, you listen to Belichick, some great Belichick stuff, and it's like, hey, where are we in the division with this, and this? Parcells was actually really great at that too. Probably who Belichick learned it from. Like, hey, where are our standings within the division at these positions? And so that was one. And then 2, quarterback health. Because I think a lot of these teams maybe, like we talked about with Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence starts 10 games. Granted, it's not like they were great in those 10 games, but, maybe you can, if you're the biggest Jags fan, you can be like, well, if you started all 17 and blah, 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 this could have happened or whatever. Brock Purdy started 15 games for the San Francisco 49ers this year. Now, granted, did he look 100% in all 15 of those starts? I will fully admit, absolutely not. But, they go 6-11 this year. 6-11, 1-5 against the division. 1-5, which that was the most shocking thing, considering this is a team the last 2 years had been 11-1 against the division. 11-1 to 6-5, or to 1-5. It's crazy. And now you have a really kind of crazy decision timeline with Brock Purdy, where it's like, all right, what are we actually going to do with him next? We've seen the NFL be a cutthroat league. This is kind of weirdly like how the Vikings are with Sam Darnold right now, where it's like, what do you actually do with a guy who, like, you've never, and I don't know, to say they've never fully 100% known he's the guy for the franchise seems a bit harsh talking about Purdy, because, he did take him to the Super Bowl. But I don't think anyone was ever like, all right, Purdy is, top 5 quarterback, no doubt about it, sign him for whatever you can sign him for. So now that starts to loom. And, Shanahan, I feel like, is always going to be one of those guys where he's going to attract so much interest from every other team because they think he can just come in and rebuild a team automatically that there's always a chance he could leave. So, I'm not saying San Francisco is going to go down this same path that Jacksonville did, but the blueprint is kind of starting to get there if they don't take care of things in this offseason and then going into next year.
Can I ask a quick question, Chad? Do you think the window has closed for San Francisco? Because that's what he looks like to me. That window to be, Super Bowl, NFC championships. I just see the division getting better. It seems like faith in Kyler Murray has been restored. The Seahawks had a sneaky 10-7 win season. I don't know if they can replicate that. But you know how cycles and windows just kind of shut in the NFL. Do you think the 49ers have reached that level, especially since they don't know what to do with what they have to do with Brock Purdy?
Yeah, it's such a hard question to answer, and that's why you're one of the best in the business, because you ask the difficult questions. But I just don't know, compared to the rest of the conference, like, I don't see that one team really outside of Philadelphia who I think and Washington, so you could say those two are like teams that you kind of, would assume are going to be in that race, in that conversation for the next year or 2 years at least. Because that's really about as long as the cycle allows it to last in the NFL with contracts and all that type of stuff. I just don't see like a third team that is in that first group that then makes San Francisco's ceiling kind of, being, hey, all right, the best you can be is the fourth best team in this conference. I don't see that kind of being a factor. I think they could, and we've seen quarterbacks, not to jump around, but we've seen quarterbacks like, Jaden Daniel. Obviously, no one has had as good a rookie year as him, but we've seen guys have good rookie years and then, regress just a little bit. And, if you regress in every area just a little bit, that can be the difference between 1 or 2 wins, and then before you know it, San Francisco, say Purdy comes back and he's super healthy. And that's another thing. They had so many injuries last year that it's kind of understandable to think, all right, a tweak here, a tweak there, and they can still, compete. Because I think mainly that's Shanahan being as good as he is. So I'm going to have to say, no, the window's not closed. I'm going to go back and actually flip a question on you two guys. Whose window, I don't know if the correct term to say would be whose window is bigger or who has a more realistic chance between San Francisco versus teams like Minnesota and Detroit.
Ethan, you want to go first, or you want me to go first?
I would have to say that Detroit has the bigger window right now. I am not going to say out on the Vikings, but the Vikings to me kind of scream one season wonder, because what we kind of saw
exactly like what they did 2 years ago.
Exactly like what we saw, or even like when Keenum was there. Like even when what we saw this year with Detroit kind of seemed to be more of a culture shift rather than like a flash in the pan. It wasn't like they had a quarterback and one guy go and have insane seasons, and then it was like every single person on their roster stepped up. Now, did they get their ass kicked in the playoffs? Of course. But again, that points more to a culture shift rather than like one hot season and then you're never going to see it again. The Vikings thing, like you said, like are they going to have JJ McCarthy next year? No offense to him, but I'm not going to sit here and be like, yeah, their window is really going to be open when they have a guy that's never thrown an NFL pass before. Like, and then when you compare that to the 49ers, I've always been a big Brock Purdy fan, and I feel like he can be at least Jalen Hurts. I mean, Jalen Hurts, I'm not the biggest fan of his, but he's definitely good enough to make multiple Super Bowls, obviously consistent contender in the NFC, and I think Brock Purdy can be just as good as him. So to me, it's really going to depend on how much humility Purdy has. If he goes in there and be like, bro, I want 4 years, $200 million, then it's like, okay, do you want to win another football game again? Whereas if he goes in there and be like, hey, I want 5 years, 150, even something like that, when you're making 30 a year, that allows you to go out and get guys. I mean, they had a top 2 running back this past year that just didn't play at all. Obviously, that's going to throw a wrench in some things. Deebo Samuel is my weight now, and he's supposed to be like a fast guy. So, I mean, I just think that they have ways to retool, and they have a quarterback that I think is definitely good enough to maintain their window. Minnesota, there's too much uncertainty, but also I think that Detroit's made too much of a culture shift now to just go back to being, a 0-16 team.
Yeah.
Fair.
Oh, I'm right there with Ethan. Everything that he said, I agree with. It's
nice.
We talk about culture, right? So San Francisco already has a culture. It's already been established. Cultures are being hired from the Shanahan tree. And then we saw that culture shift in the last couple of years with the Lions. So with the Vikings, and I'm just going to go ahead and preview here. They're a team that tends to overachieve every now and then. Mm-hmm. And I think this is what happened this year. It to me is a flash in the pan, and there's just too many unknowns. How do you know what you're going to have in a guy that has never thrown an NFL pass in JJ McCarthy, right? Yeah. We didn't know what Sam Darnold could do, and then this guy leads them to a 14-3 record. Therefore, I am more comfortable to say that the window has closed for Minnesota, whereas in Detroit, I think it's still open. A lot of their questions that have already been answered. They just need to work on a few things. It's one game. I understand it's the playoffs, but it's one game, and I'm not going to throw everything away just because of one game. And for Shanahan, we've seen bad seasons, but we
Yeah.
also seen good seasons after bad seasons. Every time he has
Yeah.
a good
Yeah.
quarterback, a healthy quarterback, the culture is there. It seems like they can come back from the lows. So I'm giving Shanahan of the 49 years benefit of the doubt, but one more year of this, and then I think it's done. Because some of those guys that they do have on their roster tend to be a little bit old, right? Your Trent Williams is the node guy. Christian McCaffrey is an older running back at this point. Deebo Samuel, Ethan said it, man. Like this dude is a big boy now. Um, Look, George Kittle's another guy that's old. It's old, but granted, tight ends can last for a long time. There are some things that they need to figure out, and I think 2025 is really going to say, like, hey, do we have another, three, 2 to 3 seasons within this crew or within this core, or do we need to start moving on and thinking about differently?
Fair, fair. Yeah, I think it's a insane. I think it's a very interesting question. I didn't want to derail Ethan. I think we're still on our first topic, which when you got the three of us together, that's to be expected pace wise. But why don't you go ahead and dive into who you thought was the biggest disappointment this year?
I think mine will be a little bit surprising to you guys because it's not a team that you instantly look at and be like, yeah, huge disappointment. But based on what I was hoping for and even what they've done their recent past, I think the Cincinnati Bengals had a disappointing season.
Shout out Aaron.
Yep, I think shout out to our sister who's apparently a Bengals fan.
Yeah.
So obviously they have the horrible start because it wouldn't be a Zach Taylor team unless they did.
You ain't kidding.
0-3. Kind of like I was talking to you guys just before we started recording. Lost to the Patriots on opening day, which I didn't even know was possible. And literally nobody they beat was good. I actually wrote down every single win that they had in their 9-win season. Here's who they beat. Carolina, Giants, Cleveland, Vegas, Dallas, Tennessee, Cleveland, Denver, and Pittsburgh. So Denver's literally the only team you could say that was good, and they beat Pittsburgh when Pittsburgh was on like already a 4-game losing streak at the very end of the year. So like Denver, good win. One of their 9 wins was against a team that was any good at all. And it was just like every single time, and you would see it. You see the graphic every week. It was like, yeah, the Bengals lose 41-38, and Joe Burrow had 435 yards, 5 touchdowns, and he kicked a field goal with his dick from 73 yards. So it was just like always something insane happening with him, but the team would just lose. And to me, Joe Burrow is one of the 3 best quarterbacks in the NFL, and now they've missed the postseason in multiple years in a row. With that and one of the best receivers in the NFL, I know that like simplifies it to just 2 positions, but normally when you see that sort of combination, it's just like a guaranteed playoff. Like even when you think about Mahomes, like look at his team. If you look at just the roster outside of the quarterback, the offense, definitely. You look at the offense and you're not like, yep, that's definitely a playoff offense. But then you insert him into it and it's like, oh, this might be a Super Bowl team. And you would think the same thing would happen with Burrow, and he's still a younger quarterback, but it's kind of insane that when you look at his offense, you don't think, again, like best offense of all time, insane, but you would think, okay, insert a top 3 quarterback in the NFL in it. You would definitely think at least playoffs, and they didn't even make that. And now that his contract's kicking in, I don't really know what's happening with, I mean, I guess they don't really in a window because, they haven't made the postseason in 2 years, but what does that mean for their window if they're already not making the playoffs with a guy under a rookie deal and now they're getting him under a huge extension? Like, what is that going to mean for them? I guess that'd be my question to you guys. Like, if they're not able to really supplement Joe Burrow with good pieces when he's taking up 8% of the cap, how are they going to do that when he's taking up, 16% of the cap?
I think the hope would be that he has kind of a Josh Allen type of thing this year where all of a sudden, they kind of reset. If you look at Buffalo this year, who I think, don't want to get into it too much, but to me, team wise, they're one of the more unexpected teams coming into the season. Obviously, you know they have the quarterback, so like you said, they're gonna be in at least some type of conversation before the season. You know, on NFL Live or something, they're gonna ask the question: can this team make the Super Bowl? For any team that Joe Burrow is on when he's playing at this level. However, it's can we reduce our spending at the offensive positions? Obviously, you're going to continue to pay Chase because Chase is arguably the best at the position. You know, at lowest, I think you could say top 3. Like that's the worst he could be is top 3 at the position.
Yeah,
so
CD, Turpin,
you're going to
Chase.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Cavante Turpin definitely up there. But when you look at that formula, you know, can they pay more than those two guys? Burrow's a guy who I think he really benefits more from a good offensive line, more so than Allen or more so than Mahomes, just because he's a touch less athletic than those guys. Still a good athlete, can move around. His pocket mobility is arguably the best of the current quarterbacks, but so you still want to have a baseline level of offensive line play to help him, and that's a tough conversation to have when you're spending that much money on a Jamar Chase and then possibly that much more on a T. Higgins. So it's a great question. I don't have an answer because I think it's hard.
I mean, the only thing I'll say is this. We've already questioned Zach Taylor before, and
Yeah.
what's up with these slow starts? Right?
Yes.
It's putting you in a tough position towards the end of the season, even though your team, you know, wins a lot of games. And Ethan, thank you for the 9 wins because I
No.
did not remember that. I was like, wow, they really didn't beat anybody, right?
Yeah.
They won 9 games by beating opponents that they were expected to beat. Now, if you read me the 8 losses, I'm pretty sure there are teams there like the Patriots that they shouldn't have lost those games to. So if you have a great quarterback and you have a great wide receiver and it's not working out, I see management taking this out on coaching, right? It's like, okay, look, these are the pieces that I can afford to bring in. I know you need an offensive line, but you have a franchise quarterback, not a franchise quarterback. A elite top 3 quarterback. You have a top 3 wide receiver. You need to win. You need to win football games.
Mm-hmm.
Sam
Yeah.
Darnold did it right with Justin Jefferson. So why can't you do this for me? And if that's not working out, I think Zach Taylor's the first guy to go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and going along with that, like their losses, other than the Patriots, it was Chiefs, Commanders, Ravens, Eagles, Ravens, Chargers, Steelers, and those are all good teams. But sorry, you're going to have to beat a playoff team to get in the playoffs. Like I'm, not,
Yep.
I get it that those are your hardest games that you lost. Like
Yeah.
if you look at it, it's like, well, we won the games we were supposed to, we lost the games we weren't supposed to, and it's like, yeah, you're going to have to win an away game in your division to make the playoffs. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
someone other than Cleveland. So it's just
And even going into the season, like, you know, you're talking about Washington and the Chargers, those 2 losses, and you said, you know, they lost to the teams they should have lost against. Going into the season, nobody was predicting either one of those teams to be better than Cincinnati. So that's kind of continues, you know, your guys' point about the coaching, where it's like, this is a team that when the best you feel about them is in the preseason, that usually says something about the team. You know, that's not a great sign. So it's definitely something to look at. Zach Taylor's on a short leash going into the start of next season.
definitely. But we've been kind of being downers for the first part of this episode. Let's get into our biggest surprises. I guess I'll start since I went last. I'll start this one.
Yeah,
It's
I'll take
boring, but I'm just gonna have to say it. That is Jaden Daniels. I was a guy, so Chad knows this. Me and Chad are pretty similar when it comes to college football. If our team isn't good, we aren't watching. If our team is good, we are watching. Chad's an LSU fan. I'm a Texas fan. So I kind of started to watch again starting last year because Texas started to be good again. But I never really watched Jaden Daniels because I'm just not watching like an 8-4 LSU team or whatever they were when he was there.
Yeah.
And so I was just kind of like, all right, sure, this dude won the Heisman, but I think the Heisman hit rate, especially at quarterback, hasn't been the best over the past 20 years. So I wasn't really expecting much, especially him going to Washington. But I think he is an interesting case study in the way that the evolution of NFL thinking has sort of changed. Because he's a guy that comes in and instead of, I think I've talked about this on a previous episode, or maybe I've just talked to Chad about it, where it's like, it used to be, this is the NFL, you're going to be a pocket passer, read your progressions, that whole kind of thing, and we're going to make you into that if you're not already. Whereas now, it's like, you know what, you're already athletic, you already have gifts of throwing on the run and just being a great runner, so we're going to play along with that. We're going to throw in RPOs, we're going to have read options, we're going to allow you to manipulate the pocket. And I think Jaden Daniels has really benefited from that. Not saying that it's not his, credit as well, but think about Jaden Daniels coming to the NFL in 2005, and they're like, all right, man, let's go 7-step drop. Let's go. The most athletic you're going to be able to do is on play action. When we have a shitty offensive line, you're going to have to, create some plays on your own. And so, 69% completion percentage, 25 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 3,500 yards passing, along with 891 on the ground. I mean, he also had the best meme of the year against the Bears, which I personally enjoyed the best. The corner or the safety, hyping up the crowd right before he gives up the game-winning Hail Mary. And like we kind of have alluded to before, like doing it in Washington is like insanity. The other 3 teams in the division have kind of just been passing around the division for the past, 10, 15, 20 years now. Yeah. And Washington's kind of been like on the outskirts, like, oh, remember that one year we won the division with RG3? And that's basically all they've had. And
that's definitely how Commanders fans sound, by the way.
That is how they sound. And so now I'm just, I'm really happy for Jane Daniels. If it wasn't for those freaking Eagles going to the Super Bowl, we could see a rookie in the Super Bowl, and that'd be really, really awesome. But, Jane Daniels surprised me, and I'm sure everyone in the NFL would say, even though he got taken, second? I think everybody, to a man, would say, yeah, I did not expect Jane Daniels to be maybe a top 3 quarterback in the NFC this year.
Yeah, I mean, he's had an insane year. Johnny, what was kind of the most, obviously the entire season is surprising, but what was some of the more surprising, leaps that he made for you this year? I would say on a consistent basis, you're probably more tuned into the college game than Ethan and I, as we just described our kind of fandom and how that kind of ebbs and flows. So let us know what to you was his biggest jumps that he made this year.
I don't know about this year, right? And I've been unplugging myself from college football lately. You ruined me, Chad, because you have this high expectation of how the game is supposed to be played, and college just isn't it, right? So you start really comparing
for that reason.
But I remember Jaden Daniels from like Arizona State, Jaden Daniels, when I used to watch more college football, and he was just your prototypical college quarterback, right? Really good on the spread offense. It's Arizona State, right? So they average 50 points a game and give up 55 points a game. So I wasn't sold. And I remember talking to you, and you're like, when he was at LSU in that last season, and I think you watched a couple of games, like, no, I think this guy could be it. And you are the quarterback whisperer. Drake May is another guy that you kind of plugged me into it. I'm impressed with what I've seen here in the NFL. I want to say composure, right? You come into the NFL, and I know at LSU there's a lot of pressure. There's an expectation not only to win, but be one of the best teams in college football. I guess the expectation wasn't there with the Commanders, but he handled it as if it was. There's something when you're watching NFL quarterbacks, right? When they drop back, you can tell, you can feel when a guy feels comfortable in that offense, when he has command of the offense. And when I saw Daniels in the NFL, that's what he looked like. Hey, snap, okay, reads, okay, good. And the athleticism, of course, helps because he can make the extra play. He can extend the plays. But that's what I saw. I love seeing that in rookie quarterbacks, and that's when he freaks me out. When you see a rookie quarterback that doesn't have that composure, who looks a little bit lost, like Anthony Richardson's that type of guy. And I saw that kind of composure with CJ Stroud last year, and I saw that with Jaden Daniels. And he just lets the game flow, and he never got too big for him because they did have, I think, a couple of comeback from behind wins, and he was composed in the second half. There, it's just composure. As far as like making the throws, the athleticism, he showed that at LSU.
Yeah.
And just kind of growing up, becoming a professional in the NFL. That's the biggest change that I saw from Jaden Daniels. And a lot of these guys that tend to work out in the NFL.
No, that's perfect. I think you really summed up kind of exactly what his career timeline was. I want to stick with you. Actually, you're the hot hand right now. Who did you have for unexpected or pleasant surprise from this year?
All right. I always go with guys that I believed in and it didn't work out. So it seems like he had a good year this year. And that's Jamison Williams, a wide receiver for the
Hmm.
Lions. This is a
Yeah.
guy that I was super high on when he came into to the NFL from Alabama. I thought he was the best receiver in that draft. First year, terrible. Has one catch first year,
Yeah.
right?
Crazy.
Last year, not much better. Off the field issues, and then this year he blows it up, right? 58 catches, 1,001 yards, seven touchdowns. But he really solidified himself as that number two wide receiver for a very good Detroit Lions football team. Uh, Not necessarily the second option because he's kind of competing for targets with Sam Laporta. Actually, Sam Laporta
Hmm.
actually had more catches than he did. Um, I would like to see a more expansive route tree for him. It seems he's like just the big play guy, but based on what I saw in college from him, he can do more than just be that home run threat. Jameson Williams was that one guy that I'm like pleasantly surprised, kind of came out of nowhere, and I really like what I saw from him this year.
Did you like what you saw from him as a passer in the playoffs?
I thought we were only talking about regular season. Isn't that when voting ends? We can't take playoffs into consideration.
No, yeah, definitely. I mean, Jameson Williams is kind of a guy where it's like came out of nowhere is weird because he's kind of in that like the third year progression is not really
Third
a
year.
thing. Where it's like you'd see guys that really their first 2 years, especially when they're highly touted
Yeah.
coming out of the
The
draft.
special ones. The special ones, you see the flashes rookie year, second year, it's confirmed 99% of the time.
Yep.
Yeah, it's at the skill positions, like the non-quarterback skill positions, especially. They'll normally those high draft picks either do one of two things: they either suck ass their first year, and then they come in and learn how to play in the NFL, and then second year they kind of get it together, or they just kind of come in as like a rookie and instantly start dominating, and then just kind of maintain that. You don't really see like this slow burn progression through the first 3 years like Jameson Williams has had. And what I really like about him too is that he is just like taking the top off the defense is kind of like a huge quote thing that people love to say,
Mhm.
but allowing a guy like Laporta and then even guys like Jameer Gibbs, who I saw had a lot of receiving a lot of catches, a lot of receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns, and that's because you get stuff taken away from having a second option like that, not just being able to shade everything toward Brown and stuff like that. Are you expecting him to sort of take another leap, or do you think this is kind of his ceiling as far as he's with the Lions and, like you said, always going to kind of be a second wide receiver option at best?
Based on what I saw from him at Alabama, he should. And I
Okay.
get it that maybe that he's being asked to be that, take the top off the defense guy. Like this is your role in this offense. But he used to run every single route at Alabama. And that's why I thought he was a legitimate number one receiver in the NFL. Now, he's kind of like, he's not kind of, he is in that number two receiver type of role. But I'm hoping that the Detroit Lions will expand that role so they can really have a true 1-2 combo instead of like, okay, Amon is our number one guy, and then like it's everybody else, right? It's either Jameer Gibbs or Sam Laporta or it's him. Where I, I want to know, and I think he can do it. If you take Amon-Ra St. Brown out of the lineup, can he be the guy? And I think he can. I hope he doesn't get an opportunity because that would mean Amon-Ra St. Brown is probably injured. So I'm not hoping or wishing for anybody to be injured for me to be right. But I think if you did take him out of the lineup, I think Jameson Williams does have the capability to be that number one guy. It's all about how you're scheming him game to game.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And Ethan, the point you made about taking the top off of the defense and how it opens up things for everyone underneath. Johnny, you know my favorite, the guy who for the past couple of years I've just said is the best guy in the league has been Tyreek Hill at the receiver position. Obviously, has been going through a decline here the past season to 18 months, so he's not really in that conversation anymore. But, the career progression, the growth that he had is kind of like the blueprint for a guy like Jameson Williams. And coming out of school, I was like, look, that was kind of peak. I wasn't watching a lot of college football. So, yes, I had watched Jameson Williams run past 3-star Vanderbilt corners, but I was like, this dude's not going to come to the NFL and be like Tyreek. Like, I can't even believe Tyreek Hill is Tyreek Hill, much less someone else come in and be like, kind of the same version, speed and all that. And I don't think he's quite as shifty and fast as what peak Tyreek Hill was. But as far as impact, he's kind of right there through a couple of years in the league. And that's when Hill, like kind of after that second, third year for him is where he kind of started expanding his route tree like you had talked about. And kind of expanded so much to the point where he really became just a slant and curl guy by the end of his Chiefs run. So obviously none of us want that to be what Jameson Williams does, but I like the track record of guys being able to develop into complete receivers. Because I think when you have that weapon of I can run past you at any time, that kind of makes it easier for the receiver themselves to be like, hey, here's 8 free yards because the corner is playing off of me because he knows I'll run right by him if I want to. Not even if I have the chance. If I want to, I'll just run right by him. So that can kind of open up the underneath for Jameson Williams, who I think it's nothing funnier than his rookie year, like you said, that one catch, and of course it's a 41-yard touchdown. Yeah, exactly. And that's the only play he made his rookie year. That is classic.
He also had a 40-yard rush, so those are the
exactly.
2 plays he made. Was a 41-yard touchdown and a 40-yard rush. So
averaging 40 yards a touch in your rookie year, normally that'd be like, man, that's a great sign. And then you're like, well, he only touched the ball 2 times. It's like, damn it. I'd like to get that number up.
So, Chad, what would you say your biggest positive surprise of the year was? We already have Jaden Daniels and Jameson Williams. Yep. Who are you going with?
I went actually with kind of 2 guys, so I cheated a bit, but they're right in the same category. You know me. I'll bend the rules when I have to. I'm going Derrick Henry and I'm going Saquon Barkley for probably the last 5 to 10 years. Really for as long as each of you guys have known me, for sure. One of my theses as a football fan has been, hey, if the running back's on the second contract, don't sign him.
Don't ever sign him, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And Henry got the 2-year, $16 million deal from the Ravens in the offseason. By the way, in case you guys didn't know, Cowboys could have signed him. They talked about that once or twice on NFL Live this year, so I just wanted to update you. Get Up talked about it a little bit too, in case you guys didn't catch that.
I don't know. I enjoyed watching Zeke run the ball on 3rd and short. I don't know about you.
Hey man, Rico Dowdle was a 1,000-yard back this year. That's all I know. And then Derrick Henry and then Saquon signs the 3 for 37 with Philly. And with both guys, like that's the thing. The blueprint was there. Oh man, they got the running rush offense focused teams now get some of the best running backs in the NFL. But like I said, the evidence has just been there of how many free agent signings has it been? How many hundreds of bust free agent signings do we have to go through, especially at the offensive skill positions, before we're like, hey, it's a bad idea? Signing guys with cap space in the NFL, guys who other teams were like, yeah, we're absolutely good with just getting rid of a guy.
I was going to say, I don't think that those people are necessarily wrong. Like, the Eagles have an outstanding offensive line and rely a lot on their run game. Lamar is a great quarterback, but even the Ravens have always been, running teams that then go on and throw the ball when they either have to or when they can. So I don't think that, you just plug Derrick Henry into the Cowboys and be like, where Dak throws the ball 50 times a freaking game, and they're just be like, yep, we're just going to change our entire team identity. And I'm sure CD is going to love it just like A.J. Brown does.
Yeah, A.J. Brown. The only thing I hope for the Eagles winning the Super Bowl is I wish they do, because that way A.J. Brown can bitch about targets as they're doing the tour around the city. When they pass the microphone.
He's going to be listening like an iPod Nano to show that he really doesn't care. He was reading a book 2 weeks ago, so now he's going to have like an MP3 player just to show that I'm completely disinterested in everything that happens during this football game.
But yeah, Saquon and Henry, and then so they have that track record of the position, but then like you said, the offense is really being like, hey, we value this position. I just didn't think, I thought Saquon, Derrick Henry, you could have talked me more into, okay, because like you said, the Ravens were 100% committed to just running the hell out of the ball. That's what they do. That's what they've been doing. And, for the past couple years, it's been running back by committee, where it's been, a mix of Justice Hill, Gus Edwards, 50 other guys who have carried the ball for him. Yeah, J.K. Dobbins, and basically any running back that's on the Chargers now. Just his previous stop was Baltimore.
Everybody had a torn ACL too for the Ravens right before the season. Yeah. Everybody.
No kidding. I know they must have had Real Madrid's physio team or something like that. But yeah, so then all that happens, and I'm like, okay, but you know what? Derrick Henry, I could see it. Saquon, I thought was going to play 6 games, and I was going to be laughing all the way to the bank and all this stuff. And now they were by far the 2 best running backs in the NFL this season. Hell, Saquon, you could argue, was the best player in the NFL this season, and I would kind of understand I would at least be open to hearing the argument. Especially with the down regular season a guy like Mahomes had, who's normally just the automatic choice for something like that. I am interested to see, though, how they kind of how they continue to age. There are already conversations about Henry looking at wanting a 2-year, $25 million extension. Look, would it be an extension that absolutely prevents you from doing anything else? No. But at the same time, would it be one that if you're the Ravens front office, you're running to the bank to go cash in? Probably not as well. So those were my 2 most pleasant surprises. And it's tough to say that Saquon was a pleasant surprise, because you know how much I hate the Eagles, but damn, game got to respect game at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of looking forward to two storylines in the offseason. One, is this now going to light the running back market back up? Are people now going to be like, oh, so those guys actually are worth paying? Oh, those guys actually can be blah, blah, blah. And 2, do you think every freaking running back in the NFL is going to get on a podcast again and talk about how underpaid they are, like they're freaking coal mine workers in the 1910s or something like that, like they did all last offseason? Who was that, Austin Eckler? That was like, actually. I was like, dude, shut up. Anyway, what do you guys think about, how it's going to unlock the running back market?
Yeah, so can I just say something? That's my topic for the take of the playoff this year. So can we segue into that?
Let's just go straight into it.
All right. I am really, this is the topic for me. Are we going to have a resurgence in the running back market because of what Saquon and what Derrick Henry were able to do? And look, just give me some stats. Out of the top 18 rushers this year in the NFL, 8 of them were on their second teams. And we usually thought running backs, if a team is letting you go, it's done, because we have this mentality of, hey, we'll draft you as a rookie. You play 3 to 4 years. After that, you can go. I don't care. I'm just gonna draft the next guy. And out of those 8 guys, right, 6 of them were in playoff teams, right? And I'll give you the guys, Saquon, Derrick Henry, Brandon Jacobs, Aaron Jones, Joe Mixon, DeAndre Swift, James Conner, who's been a while, right, with Arizona, and
Mhm.
Tony Pollard. All those guys were in top 18 of rushing, and they're all in their second team. And then when you look at Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry and how important they were to their team, and this happens especially if Saquon is the lead guy in the Super Bowl, and this Eagles win behind him. Do we start questioning, hey, if we have a really good quarterback, not elite,
Yep.
but we pair him with an elite running back, a stud, do we sign that guy in the draft? Where my AirPods fell off here. In the draft,
Getting passionate. Getting passionate.
if teams look at number first round running backs almost like the plague. Look, I got too many issues. I need a linebacker. I need a corner. I need a
Absolutely.
guard. Let the other guy pick the running back. But if studs start coming out and I have a solid team, but I'm like, hey, that guy right there can lead me to greatness at the running back position, and I just need a quarterback to make the right throw at the right time. Can you start selling yourself into it if a guy like Saquon leads, which he led the Eagles to an NFC
Absolutely.
championship win? We're not talking about Jalen Hurts. We're
Yeah.
not. Nobody's talking about Jalen Hurts. They were talking about Saquon Barkley. When was the last time that we were talking about a running back leading a team into the Super Bowl? The last time it was our guy, Rams, Gurley.
Gurley,
And
Todd.
when he was,
And then he
See
got
how
yeah,
released.
Todd
see how
Gurley.
that ended.
Yeah, didn't end well. And that's the thing,
Right.
it didn't end well. But it's starting to plant a seed in my mind of, hey, is the running back is there a resurgence in the running back? Can we sell ourselves into doing this? Hey, I'm talking about you, Cowboys. I'm talking about Miami Dolphins, right? I'm talking about Bijan Robinson in Atlanta. I'm not sold on Michael
Yeah.
Penix from what I saw from him, but hey, Bijan is a really good running back. So when it's time to, when he hits his third, fourth year, he wants a new deal, and we're like, okay, maybe we win the NFC South, but like, do we let him go and let another team take a crack at him, or do we re-sign him and try to keep the quarterback like, hey, it is what it is. You're not an elite guy. We're gonna pay you top 12, top 15 money, but we're not gonna reset the market for you. Or we're gonna go find a guy that can be a guy that can make the the timely throw, but doesn't necessarily have to be elite. All I'm saying is not only this season, but also the playoffs has kind of shown to me is, can we rely on that workhorse one more time in the NFL? Just throwing it out there, guys.
The only pushback I guess I'd give is that both of those
Yeah.
examples are of teams that were already considered elite. So I don't think that it would be changing in the draft, because the only reason is because I think a lot of times when you're thinking draft, you're thinking like high first round. Like if we're looking at
Sure.
the draft order for this upcoming year, um, we're not going to look at those teams and be like,
Tennessee's not taking a running back at
that's what I'm
one.
saying. They're not like,
Sure.
we're an Ashton Genty away from being
No,
a
I'm
pretty
just
decent
kidding.
team or something like
Well,
that.
yeah.
So
But that's a
But
good
I'm not
guy.
talking
That's a
about
good
those
guy who's
teams.
coming
I'm,
in.
I, I'm not talking about those teams. I'm talking about that
Okay.
team that's drafted 15 to 25, and then they're
Mhm.
just stuck there, right? That's what
Right.
the Dolphins are, right?
Right.
We're a mediocre 9-8, 10-7, 8-9. The Cowboys are that team that makes the playoffs, but Dak is not the guy who leads them to the promised land.
right.
If you put a stud running
Definitely
back
not
next
that.
to Dak, and the running back becomes the central piece and the main focus of the offense, does that push Dallas to the promised land and end up in the Super Bowl? That's what I'm proposing. Not your bottom feeders. They have a lot of work to do. I'm talking about,
Right.
is that missing piece the running back?
All right, well, think about it.
Well, that's
like,
a
look at the Niners. Like, look at the Niners. Like, we just talked about how disappointing they are. Like, and they didn't have Christian McCaffrey for most of this year. If they really look at it and go like, "Yo, we're Ashton Genty away from being back in that conversation," like, Chad, do you think that that's a thing that they could be looking at? I mean, they're drafting at 11, which is probably the earliest someone would take a running back at around, in the modern day.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the great. Like this year could be one of those examples where you're talking about where it's the perfect storm of the running back, especially the one coveted guy, Genty. I mean, look, famously, I don't watch that much college football. I was able to actually watch that guy a couple of times, and he's sick. Like he's running over 3 guys every single time, and then running right past 4 guys. I get it. It's the the Mountain West, but at the same time, like we've seen guys at lower levels look like that, and it did translate because sometimes you just have a guy who is that special at the position. For a team like the 49ers, I think to me, they wouldn't necessarily go that route, even though it is like, we talked, when we were doing biggest disappointment, I was focused on, missed games from the quarterback position. Hey, you could argue, and I think both of you guys have kind of at least alluded to the point, McCaffrey is probably just as valuable to that team as any quarterback is to any other team. And he was a guy who missed a lot of time this year and has missed a lot of time throughout his career. So to say, hey, should we start thinking about the next evolution of a running back position for us? Because for a while, the 49ers were kind of in that mold, how we talked about the Ravens, where, you have 3 or 4 different ball carriers who you can pencil in for 700-800 yards. I mean, Jordan Mason, people are talking about what year he's going to be an all-pro after the first couple of games of this season. So, could they do like how Baltimore did, where you kind of consolidate all that? They gave all that kind of carry and all those touches to McCaffrey. Worked out great for him. Now he's injured. Maybe Genty could be the answer. I will say I don't think Genty makes it past Dallas, though. Like, I just think because of kind of the conversation and the turmoil around, especially with Saquon being in the division and kind of being a running back in the division, that's kind of changed things. And then the fact that they could have had Henry last offseason, which, again, I agreed with the mindset not to get him. But now looking back on it, it looks like kind of a bad deal. I don't think Genty makes it past Dallas at 12. So, yeah, probably 11-12 is where you're looking at. And that's the perfect formula because you could argue both of those teams, maybe more so San Francisco than Dallas, you could argue both of those teams have a real shot to be playoff teams, maybe win a game or something like that if it breaks right for them next season. So I'm not mad at it the more I actually think about the take.
Yeah, so we've kind of jumped a little bit further down, but let's go back into the categories and hop into our biggest draft disappointment. Now, again, me and Chad's favorite part of kind of doing these lists and stuff is always seeing what our opinion or what our sort of perspective on each category is. So if we're looking at biggest draft disappointment, let's start with Chad. I don't think we've started a category with you yet. Who was your biggest draft disappointment this year?
It's all right. I'm more of a closer than a starter type of guy anyway. So for me, this one is a combination of where he was picked and also just the conversation around the guy pre-draft and the guys that succeeded at his position. You factor all 3 of those things in, I don't think you can make a choice other than Marvin Harrison Jr.
Well, I know you would say that for obvious reasons.
Well, and look, here's the fucking thing, okay? And I'm sorry, but I'm a little pissed. I consider myself. Look, I'm not a guy who in fantasy football, and for the record, the 3 of us have been in a fantasy league for, I think, the past 3 years together. So we've established our track record, right? Yeah, I'm covering my face too. Don't worry, I don't have anything to brag about. I had Mike Evans for a good portion of the season. Trade deadline comes around. One of Ethan's boys, Pat Day, guy who he introduced me to join this league,
fleeces
sends me a trade offer. Hey, what do you think about Mike Evans for Marvin Harrison Jr.? I go, shit. Marvin Harrison Jr.? No, of course. You know, Mike Evans, he was hurt at the time. He didn't even play the next 3 games. And I'm like, dude, I got it. And then the trade happens. Obviously, I got him sitting here, Marvin Harrison Jr., biggest disappointment of any rookie, so it clearly didn't go too well for me. But to rub salt into the wound, the open flesh wound, I think this is the last game. Oh, no, this is in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. This is in the fantasy playoffs. Me and this guy, Pat Day, shout out, are going against each other. I am, like, leading the whole time. I had a couple people put up career days, and I'm like, oh, I got this in the bag. Then all of a sudden, I got to pull it up, actually, because the actual game log, does it way more justice than however I'm going to remember the stat line. But then Mike Evans fucking plays. And boy, did this dude put up 7 weeks of yards in like 10 minutes. And what it was is he knew that bullshit 1,000-yard streak that he had was in jeopardy.
Yeah.
So he was like, you know what, let me turn into prime Calvin Johnson and Julio mixed into one guy. And this freaking guy puts up, where is it? It's this Chargers game where he puts up 9 catches, 159 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And it's just like, dude, what the hell? And I just end up losing. So, Pat Day, a worthy adversary, a guy who I would consider now someone I have to look up to in the fantasy football world. Because Marvin Harrison Jr. was just a piece of shit this year. And the fact that you had 3 guys at the position who were way better picks than him, Brian Thomas Jr., Ladd McConkey, and then Malik Neighbors. And the thing that makes it kind of the worst, I guess, would be, the pre-draft conversation of, man, this dude's revolutionizing the draft process. Yeah. Well, but I'm talking about the actual draft prep where it was, man, this dude's not prepping for the combine. This dude's prepping for his rookie year, which arguably to me was one of the dumbest fucking conversations of all time, because it was like, how is that news? Like, it was when I first heard that thing about, which I've told both of you guys about, where it was like, yo, you know what made Brady great is he wanted a check, like he wanted a play they could audible into if they saw the defense that was covered for the right play. It's like, well, I mean, shit, is that not what the entire sport is supposed to do? Like, that makes common fucking sense to me. And it's like, yo, Marvin Harrison Jr., he's prepping for his rookie year. It's like, shit, you mean the one that he's about to go play in? No kidding. And then he ends up with the season he has, 62 catches, 880 yards, 8 touchdowns. I mean, he was fine, but it wasn't the bill of goods we were sold. So, and then just my personal anecdote part kind of makes it so that this was a no doubt about it choice for me. So.
Yeah.
Sorry about that little mini rant I just went on.
So I'm going to have to jump in here because I am actually have a guy that is the exact same position, also a top 10 pick, and that's Roma Dunze.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because this dude, man, it was sort of like there were 3, like, even when you saw that little, what's that thing called? Hard Knocks off-season
the
thing.
In-season. The off-season.
The off-season thing with the Giants. Even they were saying, like, yeah, everyone is saying there's 3, franchise receivers in the draft.
Absolutely.
It's Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, and then Rome. And, we're going to draft Rome if he falls to us, and da-da-da-da, all this stuff that the guy was saying, their GM was saying. He had 101 targets this year. How many catches do you think he had?
Johnny, I'm going to let you embarrass yourself first because I know my answer is going to be way
I
wrong.
don't know because, I mean, he was awful. You barely saw him in any stat line. I would have pulled it up. Ethan has it, so.
101
I'm going to say
targets.
40. I'm going to say 41. I'm going to say 42 catches.
Johnny?
No, it's less than that. I'll go like 32.
Damn. So you guys had even less faith in him than I did, but it was 54.
Okay.
It was 54.
God.
But still, you're catching the ball every other target. Yeah, every other target, you are catching the ball. And he decided to supplement that with 734 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 fumbles. Like, if you have the same amount of touchdowns as fumbles and you're a top 10 pick, it's just insane to me. And I actually am one of the people that think that Caleb Williams actually wasn't bad this year, especially as a rookie. So, I mean, he was I think he threw like 20 touchdowns or something like that. So it wasn't like you could just pull the, hey, our quarterback's ass, so I can't catch anything or anything like that. So it was just insane to me.
He should have caught some more passes.
He definitely should have, and it was just one of those things where it's, when you draft a guy in the top 10, you kind of, because you think of skill positions typically get a little bit of a pass, especially offensive skill positions. It's like, oh yeah, the running back that we drafted high didn't have the offensive line. Oh, the receiver didn't have a good quarterback. Oh, the quarterback didn't have a good offensive line. What was he supposed to do? But Rome kind of, superseded all that, and now all of the Caleb Williams coming into the best situation in NFL history as a number 1 pick kind of went down the toilet when your fellow top 10 pick can't even, catch the football, I guess. So not really too detailed with Rome, just personally disappointing for me when I saw him tear apart my Texas Longhorns last year. I was hoping he could at least tear apart one NFL defense, but he also caught 2 touchdown passes in one game, so that actually put the cherry on top. He didn't do shit else the rest of the year. And the other touchdown he caught was in the last game of the season when they were kind of fighting for the number 1 pick, low-key, but...
One thing you're definitely going to get on the Glue Guys podcast is personal vendettas that Ethan and I have against people. Both of our picks, strictly personal reasons. Johnny, let's see. Could you make it 3 for 3, or are you going to do a half objective
Yes,
pick?
we can. Yes, we can.
Yes. Good. Come to the dark side.
Not as much hype as you guys, but for me, it was the 33rd overall pick, Keon Coleman, wide receiver from Florida State, the Buffalo Bills.
Thank you, man.
God damn, man. This guy was killing it at Florida State. When they went on that national championship run, and of course they didn't make it to the Final Four at the end because of Travis Jordan got hurt. This dude was balling now, just a big dude, catches the ball at the high point, had 11 touchdowns. And I'm like, man, this guy needs to go first round. And then when Buffalo snatched him at the beginning of the second round, I was like, yeah, man, let's go. Keon Coleman. And then he goes to the Buffalo Bills, right? A team that just lost Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. And their next best option is Khalil Shakir. And I'm like, man, this guy's about to put up some numbers. Josh Allen, I think Josh Allen it's tied with Patrick Mahomes as the best quarterback in the NFL. I think he's right there. And I know he likes to distribute the ball, but I'm like, man, Keon is going to be a number 1 target. This guy is going to destroy the AFC East. And I get 29 catches for 556 yards and 4 touchdowns.
God.
Granted, it's number 2 in the team, right? It's numbered. I mean, he's behind Khalil Shakir, but like, it was just so underwhelming. And I know you guys are like picking top 10 guys, and I know the expectations were greater. I would say for Rome, I get it that he had a rookie quarterback, and he also had Keenan Allen and DJ Moore in front of him that took a lot of targets. Marvin Harrison, I looked at him too. No really excuse. I mean, Trey McBride to me is. I actually thought I wanted to put him in one of the other categories, but
yeah,
I am just so disappointed about Keon Coleman because I thought the whole situation that he was coming in to was perfect for him to be the guy, and he just ended up being just a guy, underwhelming. Look, all that hype about the press conferences in the preseason. He's a funny dude talking about his jacket.
Yes.
Didn't live up to any of that shit. Because when you're funny and cool like that, I'm expecting you to play well. I'm expecting you to be a stud. You get in a press conference and you didn't do jack crap. I'm disappointed in you, Keon Coleman.
Yeah, I mean, I could kind of sniff that out in the preseason when he was kind of going to too far. Like when I saw the shit about he didn't know what his signature was, like when he was signing his contract, and he was like, "So I just write my name in cursive." I was like, "I mean, you're still 22. Like you've never signed anything before in your life." I'm kind of confused.
And plus, it wasn't like one day. It was just like, "Hey, you might go to the NFL tomorrow." Like something tells me there was a little process behind it.
Yeah, exactly. And then, I mean, he was competing with Xavier Leggett for the biggest gulf between media presence and actual production for the rookie class this year.
If we're going multi-sport, Bronny James is lapping people for that award. Just in case anyone's wondering.
I don't know, because Bronny's kind of been getting off in garbage time. He's like he's been making a couple, dribble handoffs, a couple things like that. But no, all jokes aside, though, it's just I agree because Keon Coleman, like the whole preseason stuff. My fiance's mom is a Bills fan when they're good, and so now that they're good, she was like seeing all this stuff on him in the preseason, and I was just like, dude, he's not gonna be all that, this, that, and the other, and then he sucked ass. So that kind of felt good right here in my heart. So
he was a lot stiffer of a route runner in the NFL than I thought he ever was in college. That was like he had very little kind of separation / smooth. Like every catch he made almost felt like it was a contested DeAndre Hopkins in his prime type of catch. But it's like, well, DeAndre Hopkins was one of the best receivers of the modern generation in his prime. So, and we're talking about Keon Coleman. So.
I'll give you a better name, Devontae Parker. Least separation
your boy.
in the NFL.
Your guy.
But he was
you love to complain about Devontae Parker's separation. The amount of separation he was getting.
Dude, I thought Devontae Parker was good because his name came up in a Bryson Tiller song, and then I looked at his stats one year, and this dude had like 25 catches, like in an entire 16-game season. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah, not good. Not good. We don't need to go back down that road.
Went on to become a Patriots legend, though, too. So I think he just kind of owns the division more than anything. Let's go with a team overachiever. I just quickly wanted to say that I think the Raiders winning 4 games, I think kind of makes them an overachiever in my eyes. Because I thought this team had like 1-16 written all over them. So I'm proud of the Raiders for my dad. But all jokes aside, Johnny, why don't you get us going on who do you think your biggest overachiever was as far as a team goes?
Unfortunately, this is not a sexy pick, guys. I'm going with the Minnesota Vikings. 14-3. The goes into Week 18 with a shot to be the number 1 overall seed in the NFC. Tumultuous offseason, right? You lose a guy like Kirk Cousins who had been there for 6 seasons. Then you have a question mark at the quarterback position. By the time you draft J.J. McCarthy, he was the 4th or 5th quarterback taken in the draft.
I think
so
fourth, yeah.
4th. So you're not really getting top of the pig, and then this dude goes down, right? And here comes Sam Darnold, and it's not like they had a great season last year. They were 7-10 last year, so 7-10 with a potential downgrade at the at the quarterback position. You bring in
You're telling me that's not the recipe for 14-3. Go 7-10 and then get worse at the QB spot.
Not necessarily, Chad. Not necessarily. So when they went 14-3, and I forgot like the first. This is the first or second game, but they were like beating up on opponents, and I thought it was an overreaction, but somehow they kept it up throughout the whole season. They lost both games to the Lions, so which is a telling sign. I mean, you gotta win your division games, and they lost to the Rams. Mm-hmm. So those are their 3 losses in the season. But Sam Darnold, 35 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. And I know we talked about this before. I don't feel they can replicate it. If you're talking about teams that are going to have a regression, I think that the Minnesota Vikings will kind of get back to what they actually are, which I think is right around 500, maybe a 10-win team. So that's why I think they really overachieved by going 14-3.
Real quick on Minnesota, what are your guys' thoughts on the Darnold McCarthy situation? Like, would you? Obviously, you would say, sign Darnold if it's cheap or whatever. But like, what's the number where all of a sudden you're like, well, shit? Or would you just not sign him at all?
I move on. This is my personal. You
Wow.
move on. You
Okay.
drafted a guy in the first round to be the guy. I
Yep.
know it's almost like a snake charmer. We have these guys that come in the NFL and they have one really good season, and then we want
Yeah.
to throw money at them, and it's such a risk. I know it kind of worked out for Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay, but I mean the Vikings have gone through that. It wasn't Nick Foles. It was Casey Keenum, right? That
Case.
flashy
Keenum,
rookie
Case.
yeah.
Yeah.
season. Yeah, Casey Keenum. Nick Foles. I mean, Blake Bortles was not really a 1 year guy, but the 1 year that he took them to the AFC Championship, they gave him the money. Daniel
Yep.
Jones,
Yep.
right? You had that one good year, so you pay him. Look,
I
there
stand by
is
that
a
contract.
process. Look, there's
Hey,
a process. You didn't believe in Sam Darnold when you brought him in. You didn't believe in
no.
him.
Yeah,
You
absolutely
brought him
not.
in to be a backup. You drafted a guy that you thought was going to be better. If Sam Darnold was your plan A,
You don't
he
draft
was not your
McCarthy.
plan A. Yeah, you don't draft McCarthy, and he shouldn't be plan A just because he played one good season. He has enough time in the NFL that we know plenty about him. Just let him walk. Let him get paid somewhere else. Maybe the Raiders will pay him. Maybe the Giants, whoever it is, just let him walk. It's just me.
I told Chad we kind of had this conversation. We kind of had this conversation a lot, talking about all sports. That I feel like every team, if you're a fan of a team, this is an exercise I think you should partake in. Is before the season starts, you write down exactly what your expectations are and what your thoughts are on the team. And I think you should look at that once your season ends. Because I say this all the time as an Arsenal fan. 2 years ago when we challenged for the title for the first time, and people were disappointed that we lost. And I'm like, look, if you were to write down what our expectation was in August, you would say, hopefully we make the Champions League. You can't then be pissed off if we finish second. I feel the same with the Vikings. I think you would write down at the beginning of the year, as soon as J.J. McCarthy goes down, you'd write down, hopefully Sam Darnold plays well, and hopefully we do well, but J.J. McCarthy's our guy of the future. You don't just turn that on a dime and be like, well, he's played well enough. He got his ass kicked in the only 2 games that meant anything this year, but, he led us to 14-3, so therefore we have to give him a fat contract. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wonder, like, is there... did it get so bad that if you're like, well, shit, if we can get him for, $50 million for 2 years with basically only 1 year of it really guaranteed, like, could that happen? But then you talk about teams like the Raiders, where I actually think the Raiders would, like, give him a multi-year guaranteed deal, to be quite honest. Even, we talked about Indy and the rabbit holes they've been through at the quarterback position, like, no one would be surprised if first day of free agency, Irsay is like, all right, here's 3 years, $120 million. So yeah, I would have to. In a perfect world, I wouldn't think it would be horrible to re-sign Darnold on a cheaper deal like that. But like we kind of just talked about, I think there's going to be a bigger market for him, which means he's got to move on.
Right.
So
Chad, who would your team overachiever be this season, 2024?
I'm going to keep mine super brief because we already really mentioned this team a whole bunch, but it's the Washington Commanders. I mean, 4-13 in 2023, go to 12-5 this year. I think arguably we talk about Jaden Daniels and he's the headline and all that stuff, obviously, but the defense is honestly more shocking, or maybe even just as shocking, that they got that much better over 1 year to me. I mean, last
Bobby Wagner
year,
signing.
Johnny, you and I, the number of times where I've said some stupid stuff about how good I thought the Commanders' defense could have been. Finally, it was honestly the perfect mix for me, the perfect storm, because it was the defense I had been talking about for 5 years that should be good, adding arguably my favorite rotation defensive end in Dorrance Armstrong in NFL history. And then it's like, all right, now they're in the conference championship. So I somehow felt vindicated when arguably the Cowboys' deepest historic rival ended up making the conference championship with the guy who was our defensive coordinator as the head coach. I was able to get a win out of that one. So you should be proud of me there. but they go from literally bottom of the league in yards and points allowed in 2023, like 32nd bottom of the league, the worst defensive team in the whole NFL. And now they're 13th in yards this year, 18th in scoring defense. Is that awesome? No. That's middle of the road, maybe, obviously leaning towards the upper half of that with the yards. But that was crazy. That's a crazy improvement compared to what they were, the season before. And we can argue about what the motivations were after the first 7 or 8 games when they knew they didn't have a chance in hell of winning anything, like how locked in is the defense. But still, you talk about the Bobby Wagner signing. That's another one that I was just like, oh, okay, throw that in the laundry list of guys we get excited about in April and May that are borderline going to get cut from the team when it's November. And Wagner was awesome this year. So Washington, definitely my biggest surprise of the season. And I got to say, I hope it doesn't continue much more because they're a division rival.
Yeah. My team overachiever, and this one's going to sound a little bit strange, but I'm going to say the Rams. I look at their team, and I'm like, this team just isn't that good. Like, even as much as people love Puka, it's like, it's not like this guy's putting up 1,500 yards and 20 touchdowns or something like that. Like, he's a good receiver, not a great receiver, but he seems great because Sean McVay's the best coach in the NFL. And that's kind of what I learned from them this year, where it was like, you're looking at their team, and it's like they don't really have huge weapons. I mean, Kyron Williams had a good year, but it's like you're not looking at their team. It's like, dude, they're stacked. They have a great defense or any of this other stuff. And yet they're just like, all right, we're just going to go 10-7 and be one play away from the NFC Championship. So I was really, really happy for my guy and Chad's guy, Sean McVay. I think this really just put him on like a different level to where, he's definitely not on this guy's level yet, but you just knew like Belichick, regardless of who's on his roster, he's just going to win 10 games. Now, that does factor in that he had 4 guaranteed wins with the Jets and Bills in his division for the entire time, but you
can go ahead and say Dolphins, man. You don't have to hold back.
I didn't want to.
Come on.
6 free wins a year. I think that helps you get to 10. But McVay, man, this is his 8th season as the Rams coach. He's made the playoffs 6 times. One time he didn't make it. He went 9-7, so he was right there. I think he lost on like a tiebreaker. And then the other time was me and Chad's favorite moment of the past 15 years of the NFL. The Baker on Thursday Night Football was that season where it was like
the
Stafford
Baker resurgence
already wasn't good, and then he got hurt, and they had to have Baker on like 2 days in the organization,
like in the facility, yeah.
And they won that game. So 2 Super Bowl trips, obviously won a Super Bowl. He's just been phenomenal, and I just kind of wanted to shout him out. I thought this season really showed just how elite of a coach that he is, that he can take this team that, again, on paper, you're not like, like 38-year-old Matt Stafford and a couple of weapons that are under 1,000-yard receivers and Kyron Williams. Yep, this is a divisional round playoff team. So I just wanted to shout him out real quick. Like Chad, I didn't want to harp on it too much, but this next category. Go on.
No, I was actually going to say, can we transition this into the I Told You So award, because this is actually my I Told You So.
Perfect.
I feel like the Rams I was a team. Now, defensively, obviously, I didn't see, I did not see Jared Verse, the one first-round pick they've had in about 35 years, actually turning into a really, really good edge rusher. I know he only put up 4.5 sacks this year, but the amount of pressure that he was able to generate. And then, the Braden Fisk pick, no one in the league had that one. This is one of the things about the Rams, and I think one of the misconceptions about them in this current iteration, and Johnny's shaking his head because he knows exactly where I'm going. It's not that the Rams don't emphasize the draft, because they actually emphasize the draft as much as any team in the NFL. They just didn't really see the emphasis on the first round part of it. As much as, the fact that they really feel like, hey, we're able to get these guys in later rounds. And if those guys are able to be contributors around these key stars that we're paying big money to, that we're giving the first round picks away for, then that all of a sudden can make us look a lot better. But this year on defense, they didn't even have, you look at their guys, Johnny, my boy Troy Reiter still getting 6 games with them this year. But you look at their defense, like it's a bunch of guys no one's ever heard of, really. And a bunch of guys they drafted, a couple of guys who they just signed as free agents, and all of a sudden they're a team that's in the playoffs, winning the division at 10-7. I thought best case scenario, I say I was the I told you so. I thought best case scenario was like, hey, they could make a wild card push. So even this was, maybe a bit more than I expected, but 10-7, man, and Ethan, I completely agree with what you said about McVay. I think we all kind of share that sentiment about him, where he's just one of those guys where as soon as he's on your team, you have a chance. And there were some rumblings about, especially 2 years ago, where it was like, hey, what's the next move going to be for McVay? Like, could he end up going somewhere? There was that obviously Amazon rumors when that was kind of starting up. And I thought McVay was kind of not on the way out, but I thought he was going to be, like a guy who is moving on to that second chapter. Because, he's obviously still so young that he's going to be coaching for a while. It's like, who's that second team he's going to, But then he just reinvented this Rams team into a ball control. They can run the hell out of the ball. Kyron Williams, this is 2 straight years where he's just been a very, very consistent rusher. They didn't even have a 1,000-yard receiver this year. Normally you look at the Rams and you're like, what do you think of? You think of, receivers and offense spread open and all that stuff. Nakua and Cooper Kupp only combined for 1,700 yards last year. Mm-hmm. And they still went 10-7. And Stafford was still throwing the ball for a period of time as well as any quarterback in the NFL this past year. So, and there are rumors about, is Stafford weighing his options of, is he going to come back? Is he not going to come back? I'm just really excited to see the Rams kind of build on this season and then see, hey, can McVay rebuild them on the fly again? So I'm excited for the Rams.
Yeah, it did seem for a little bit that McVay was kind of headed to that John Madden sort of career, where it was super short career, super impactful. Hell, I was looking up Sean McVay earlier, and in his Wikipedia page, there's a part that says Sean McVay effect, where apparently it's something where it's because he did so well as a 35-year-old coach. Now every team in the NFL is kind of oh, hey, you did well at freaking Texas Tech for 2 years. Hey, why don't you come be our head coach? Oh, you drew up a couple cool plays for Andy Reid. Why don't you come be our head coach? And that impact and winning a Super Bowl, getting to 2, it kind of seemed like he was headed toward that. But now, there's no telling. We've seen young coaches sort of be run out of the door in recent years. But obviously he's gone on. Johnny, it looked like you had an opinion on it. What's your take on this?
I just want to say it's the quietest 10-7 NFC West, title that I've seen in a long time. Mm-hmm. And I think we're getting to this point where we're taking for granted Sean McVay's success.
Yep.
And we talked when we were doing the Lazy Boy podcast a few years ago, and we talked about top coaches. Sean McVay was there, and it's quiet. Nobody's talking about the rings. They're not a sexy team anymore. They just play in a sexy stadium. But it's like Chad said, the most impressive things is that they value the draft. And we used to say, no, they value free agency. They're spending all that money to go get big guys now, big trades, and kind of give it. It was a big trade for draft picks they don't value. But they found a formula of getting those guys in the later rounds and guys that come in and make an impact. Even if it's not starting 16 games, it's a guy that has the functions and they do their function really well. I thought he was going to retire with Aaron Donald. I thought the window closed, and it seems like it's not closed yet. Granted, I think it really hinges on Matthew Stafford and what that quarterback position looks like. But I'm confident in Sean McVay taking a flyer, not necessarily in a first-round guy at a quarterback position, or maybe a Sam Darnold out there, and just continue to do his thing. I'm actually jealous that you guys thought about the Rams, and because they're so quiet, I didn't think about them. So
Dang.
shout out to you
They
guys.
even went under the radar to you. That's crazy.
Yeah, but John, so who did you think about when it came to an "I told you so"?
Look, I know we've been talking for a long time, and I'm sorry. I'm gonna keep this as short as I can. I apologize to
Go
you,
ahead.
Ethan
Go
and
ahead. I
Chad.
know where you're going. Just let it
You know
out.
where I'm going.
Yeah.
Tua is not it.
I know it. As soon as you can get a
He's
change
not
in his
it.
tone.
I'm tired of it. I'm tired.
Let's go.
2023.
Okay.
Oh, they put up 70 points against the Broncos. Oh, look how sharp and accurate he is. Oh, look at anticipation. Oh, Dan Orlovsky loves him and Ryan Clark and OG3. Why are you guys getting on him? No. This guy ain't it. And then they paid him in the offseason because they thought that he was it. They thought people think, and I'm talking about in big sports media, that Tua Tagovailoa is an elite quarterback. He is not. He is your prototypical system quarterback. He plays well within the system. He beats the teams that he's supposed to beat, but you put him in the big stage, he doesn't show up. And now it's not only show up when he's playing, he's not even showing up to the game because he can't stay healthy. He is not it. And I've been saying this for 2 or 3 years. Even when they were on that run in 2023, and Chad used to ask you, how do you feel? I'm like, oh, it looks good. But I'm like, as the season progressed and I saw when he played the Eagles and the Chiefs it just shrunk. The stage got too big for him. Stage fright. He's not it. Stop blaming the offensive line. Stop blaming Tyreek Hill. Stop. He's just not that good. I saw Joe Burrow go to a Super Bowl with Isaiah freaking Prince at right tackle.
Yeah.
Getting the crap out of him, blown out every single play by any defensive end that would match up against him. I know Isaiah Prince because Miami drafted him in the 5th round. Dude couldn't even block for crap, and he didn't look any better in Cincinnati. And I think when we talked about the running back spot, I think that somehow Miami is going to talk themselves into it. Maybe we bring in a running back, Maybe we bring in a Saquon. Who's out there? Who can we make a trade for? Tyreek wants nothing in Miami. He will not be a Dolphin in 2025. Yeah, maybe can we make a trade? Who's out there? Maybe a Jonathan Taylor for a Tyreek. I don't know. And I'm just flabbergasted. Prior to the 2024 season, like Miami, people are considering Miami a Super Bowl contender.
Yeah.
You gotta be kidding me. I am tired of it. He is not it. He is a franchise quarterback, and I differentiate between franchise and elite quarterback. Franchise quarterbacks are guys that play 17 games for you every year. And they do okay. They beat who they're supposed to be, but they don't win the games that you really want them to win. And that's what he is. He's not elite. I told you, and I'm going to keep telling you. And hopefully by 2026, we have a new GM, new head coach, and definitely a new starting quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. Thank you, and I apologize for the outburst.
Dude, that wasn't even nearly as bad as I was predicting. That was like a 7 out of 10 on the Johnny scale. So I'm not mad at that. I'm not mad at that. You've gotten calmer in the years. You've gotten calmer. So what is the like? I don't want to sit here and act like I'm Tua non, but what is the pro Tua conversation? I think you talk about how he's one of the. I don't know if enigma is the right word that we're looking for or what, but one of the guys who just polarizing. I guess polarizing would be the term where there are people who just love him and just think he's awesome. And then there are the people like you, I would think the more rational type of people who are like, what the hell with this guy? So what are the arguments that the people who are pro Tua are making at this point when we've seen kind of consistently that he just doesn't get it done in these big games, especially later on in the season?
Everything else is a problem. So when we're looking at stats, he puts up high completion percentages, right?
Ah,
But they don't take into account that a lot of those throws are safe throws. It's
yep.
not contested down the field throws where he tends to underthrow. So that's one. Other one, oh, but they never fix the offensive line. And Teron Armstead is always hurt. And then Bob Hunt went to Carolina. We don't have a guard, and Tyree quit on the team. Oh, this is the latest one, right? Because he's been injured.
Oh god.
I mean, we saw what Huntley did. He couldn't even execute the offense. That's how good Tua is. You see how good Tua looks in that offense. And then the GM came in a press conference after the season and said, they asked about, hey, how about a more veteran, experienced backup quarterback since Tua has all these injury issues? Oh, we don't have enough cap space. So you wanted to get a better quarterback because you thought that could. There's a high probability of that happening, and then so you're already telling me that he's just there's just so many issues. So it wasn't a matter of the backup being bad. It's just if they got a better backup, they probably could have executed that offense just as fine as Tua. So it's just excuses, but it's never putting the fault at Tua. Why did you make that throw? The Houston Texans game? Disgusting. The 3 interceptions.
Yeah.
Disgusting.
Yeah, that was bad.
Right? And Tyreek quit on the 50-50 ball. Why are you putting a 50-50 ball against him and Stingley?
Yeah.
Why?
That didn't make sense.
He's not a 50-50. That's not Tyreek, right? We talked about the complete route tree, and Tyreek can do that. But I've seen Tyreek having to slow down a bit because the balls just don't get there on time. Tua is great when everything goes right. The timing is right. He's admitted, I can't see over the offensive line. I need everything to be perfect on time for the offense to run. As soon as you hit him in the mouth and you start making him make adjustments, he's just not that guy. And stop believing that he's going to be that guy. He's Ryan Tannehill, just as good. If you're telling me that everything else is the issue, the guy's not that good because he can't overcome all those issues around him. So that's what's being said out there.
Fair. I think I can't add anything more. You summed it up from every angle, every perspective. But yeah, I was gonna say, I think honestly, I just need you don't need a water break, do you, or anything like that?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Anyway, it was all built up in here. He's just like,
I know. That's why as soon as I heard you start apologizing in the first sentence, and I was like, dude, just go ahead. This is the whole reason we had you on. I've been waiting to hear it.
So, Chad, what did you tell us? What did you tell us so in this NFL season?
The Rams.
Yep.
Yeah, the Rams. Eve, why don't we go to yours? And then we can kind of end with if we have any parting thoughts or anything else we wanted to touch on before getting out of here.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's kind of lazy and it's kind of tired, and I think I've brought it up on a podcast or two, but just the combination of Josh Allen and Sam Darnold, I just never gave up. And I know Josh Allen has kind of been hip and cool the past couple of years, so I guess I can't really take a victory lap on that. And somebody called me out actually a couple of weeks ago when I brought up my love for Darnold coming out. And so I just want Chad to confirm that when both Darnold and Allen were coming out, that I was like, one, 100%. Darnold's legitimately good, and two, I thought that Josh Allen was going to be an elite quarterback, despite 100%. The fact that he threw about 300 interceptions that first year. So
yeah, he did, including on the first play of his career.
Yeah, so seeing Josh Allen be, in my opinion, the best quarterback in the NFL this year and the NFL MVP, it's just like a good pat on the back. Like, you know what? It might have been, 2017 draftees, so it might have been 8 years ago, but I still and like Johnny was saying about franchise quarterbacks, I think I mean, Sam Darnold probably is a franchise quarterback, not an elite quarterback, but a guy that will start 17 games for your team, and you can make the playoffs with him, and you can probably win a playoff game with him if you put him in the correct type of thing, which I think is the thing where, again, as a Cowboys fan, when people see Dak, they're like, oh, he sucks, he's this. It's like, no, he's a franchise quarterback. Like you just said, he can win 12 games. He can win a playoff game. He's not going to win a Super Bowl by himself. He's not going to go out and win MVP, even though Lamar has about half his numbers. He's not going to go out and do any of that stuff. But, just very quickly, I know we did say we weren't going to talk about this, but Johnny, I guess we haven't had you on, obviously. What's your opinion on the MVP discourse of this year? Because last year, apparently, it's not about numbers, it's about impact. Dak had like double the amount of numbers that Lamar had. Not literally, but his numbers far surpassed Lamar. But then everyone's like, well, obviously he's a better player than Dak, so you have to give it to him. And then this year, it's all about, Lamar threw 2 more touchdowns than Josh Allen, so obviously he's the MVP. What's your kind of thoughts on that?
Man, I hate the fact that you put me on the spot, but I'll go ahead. It's
Big
tough.
time.
I think there's a certain positive bias towards Lamar Jackson, and I think there's always, because too many people have questioned him in the passing game. And
no, look, let's just call it like it is. Let's just call it like it is, so we don't have to beat around the bush. Bill Polian is a dumbass.
Okay.
And because Bill Polian decided to be a dumbass and make a dumbass statement, say he should have been a receiver, now since that day, it's been against the law to even criticize the guy as a quarterback, which is fucking bullshit. I'm sorry, it's bullshit. Like, yes, Polian said that. Sorry, Johnny got me hyped.
Go ahead.
Johnny went on the Dolphins rant and it got me hyped. It's bullshit because any other quarterback that plays. Look, when you look at regular season, you cannot say anything really about Lamar Jackson. He has proven to be one of the best regular season quarterbacks in the NFL. I think he's a guy who, although we can definitely have a conversation about his health in multiple years, he's a guy that if you're getting for 17 games, he's in that group of you will make the playoffs. No, you should definitely make the playoffs, really no matter what the supporting cast is around the guy. When you get to the playoffs, there is a completely different conversation. There is no difference between him and Dak Prescott when it comes to the playoffs, when it comes to the playoff numbers. Anyone that's watching this and is saying, oh, you're just a salty Cowboys fan, blah, blah, blah. First off, I am a salty Cowboys fan, so I'm going to get that out of the way. That part's clear. No doubt about that. But you look at the numbers, you look at the performances. They have not been to that level. And 31 out of 32 quarterbacks would get shit on for that interception that he threw in the Buffalo game. Yep. And people will end up saying
or the fumble.
Because exactly, or the horrible fumble. But because we only look at the last data point to sum up the entire fucking thing, it's Mark Andrews lost that game for him. Mark Andrews let him down. Did Mark Andrews have 2 horrible plays? 100%.
Who else had 2 horrible plays?
But, I was going to say, but Lamar had 2 awful plays. Like, 2 awful plays. That interception, I was talking to someone, I was like, I think that's the worst interception of the entire playoffs. And this person's going to remain nameless because he's a very good friend of mine, and I think he's smart. But he countered, when I said I thought it was the worst pick of the playoffs, he countered it by saying, I don't know, I feel like Lamar is kind of a guy who can't be criticized to me. Because of fucking what? Because of some regular season performances he's had? Nothing in his postseason career says that he cannot be criticized or he's uncriticizable. Like, that's just not possible. I'm sorry. And you can say it's a team game, so don't count the record. Fine, don't look at the record. Look at the individual performances. He hasn't been good enough. He was maybe to the stand, like, he was good enough to obviously be in that Buffalo game. But that's like 1 out of the 7 games. And maybe 2 or 3 of them he's been to that level. But when over half of the times you have not been to the level needed to win a playoff game, you should start to get some shit for that. And he never will because Bill Polian's a dumbass. So conclusion is I'm blaming one person for the whole NFL, and it's Bill Polian.
Yeah, and it's also funny because it comes into like criticizing quarterbacks in general. And every single person is guilty of this. I guess technically I can consider myself part of the media now. I'm guilty of this. Chad's guilty of this. I'm sure Johnny's guilty of this. Every single talking head in sports is guilty of this. Is when you change the goalposts for things, then that's when it gets strange. Like Chad said, everyone wants to say, oh, the Cowboys, Dak, when are they going to win a playoff game? When are they going to get to a Super Bowl? Y'all always say it's y'all's year, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I have to hear every fucking offseason that Lamar is the greatest player of all time, but yet it's never his fault when they lose. And it's not like they're losing and he's putting up 430, 5 touchdowns and no turnovers. Yeah. Like, they're losing, he's putting up 220.
That's what Josh Allen does. That's what Josh Allen does, and he still takes shit.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, and also, when all of your yards are the 2 drives when your team's already about to lose the game, I'm sorry, those are garbage time numbers. I don't care that
the Matt Ryan corollary.
Yeah, I don't care.
Wow. That was Matt Ryan's whole career.
I don't care that Mark Andrews dropped the ball. Is that a horrible play? Obviously it is. But 100%. It's so funny that people try to put, one play. This is what I say about referees all the time. When you're a kid and, the referee makes an awful call on the last play of the game and the coach is like, referees don't decide games. But, however, that one turnover that I had in this one moment did decide the game. So that moment did decide the game, but this one didn't. That's how I feel like with Lamar, or with that game specifically. It's like, man, that Mark Andrews drop to find the game. I'm like, okay, so this dude dropping the snap, picking it back up, and then running around and dropping the ball again didn't decide the game? Him throwing the ball 15 yards over his receiver's head didn't define the game? I don't understand how those things don't line up. But again, like Chad said, since it's Lamar, then you just have to be like, oh, buddy, good job. No one thought you could play NFL quarterback. And now you're doing it. Good job. Really, really good job.
What I will say is this, though, and this is what, to me, pushes Lamar Jackson into that bottom tier of elite quarterbacks, is that at least he put them in a position to win the game, or at least tie.
100%.
Because that overall drive, it was him that
the mental toughness to come back from the early turnovers to put him in that position, go on that drive, no doubt about it, 100%. But no one is saying that on Monday. If it's Kirk Cousins,
because the narrative, because it's not about what we're seeing. We're not talking about what we're seeing on the field. We're talking about outside narratives that influence what we think we're seeing on the field, and I think that's the worst thing, because there's a storyline behind it. Let's not talk about the storyline. Let's just look at the player. And I think Lamar's the kind of guy that is a stat pattern. He likes to put them some numbers when he's beating up on bad teams. And I 100%. Think Josh Allen is not really like that. But the thing about Josh Allen, if you ask me, hey man, it's fourth quarter. You have 1 minute and 30 seconds left. Who do you want? Do you want Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen? I'm going to say Josh Allen 100% of the times. I think he can take over games. So if you're asking me about MVP, I think Josh Allen deserves the MVP over Lamar Jackson, even though Lamar Jackson has better numbers. It can't just be about the numbers. We always talk about this. The numbers they're there, but you have to interpret them. Same thing with Tua, same thing with Dak, same thing for any player. You have to interpret. Okay, it's like an analyst, right? Chad and I were analysts. I don't know how, it's like this. You have information. And you have tons of information, but what does all that information mean, right? What is your analysis on that information? Don't just give me stats. Okay, congratulations, you can read numbers. What is your analytical view about what is going on? And to me, it's right there with Ethan, right? I'm not sure if I'm prepared to say that Josh Allen is the best quarterback in the NFL, because I think Mahomes and him are tied. I'm trying to decipher, but man, Josh Allen is a freaking beast, man. And he puts up the numbers too, just not as good as Lamar Jackson, but there's a lot of running in there. Also, a lot of plays where I think Lamar just kind of runs with the ball, and I don't think that he's supposed to. There's a lot going on, and that's why you got to watch the game. You can't just give me stats. Tough question, Ethan, man. I love the reaction from Chad, though.
Sorry. I got a bit passionate. Yeah,
so we've been going for almost 2 hours now. I don't want to really harken back to the days when me and Chad had a 3-hour episode on our third episode. So why don't, Chad, is there any parting thoughts or sort of last question that you wanted to ask before we head out of here? I know you talked about maybe a topic just before we started recording that maybe you wanted Johnny's opinion on before we headed out.
Yeah. Okay.
Shifting it away from the NFL.
I'm glad you remembered it because I only had NFL thoughts. Neymar to Santos. I'll make my arguments first, and then I think Johnny. I think we're actually a bit more aligned on this than maybe I'm thinking initially. I just think Neymar at this point is a storyline only. He is a name only. He is nothing when it comes to the actual play. And the part that sucks is like I don't want to see him taking away from people who are maybe younger who could use the development, because Brazil has become not even become, they've been this way for a long time, been a league of exciting developing young players, specifically attackers, I would say in the last 5 to 10 years, who were able to see a small flash out of in South America, and then they go to Europe and develop. Johnny, I think one of the arguments you've been making is you want to see those players. I know your dad's been making this argument for sure. So we got to get him on, but you want to be able to keep those players in Brazil for at least a little bit longer. Like, kind of at least start to see them become real players before they go off to Europe and European teams just not overpay them, but just pay more than what most teams in South America or Brazil could pay them for 10 to 15 years. And I'm just worried that, because it's not even just Neymar. Like, I think there's been a move of a lot of older guys, to Brazil and other South American leagues specifically over the past year or so, especially when you talk about like Danilo, him and Alexandro pairing up at Flamengo for the 17th time in their career. Even like a Memphis Depay going to Corinthians and stuff like that. Like, just things you wouldn't have heard of or seemed kind of unheard of. But now those guys are taking away from the excitement of these younger players. I mean, look, it's too early to call it a crisis, I would say, but I feel like it's trending in the wrong direction. I think Neymar could kind of be the face of this wrong turn that it's kind of making. Am I overreacting with that, though?
I won't say you're overreacting, but there have been some misses too when the Brazilian market goes to that older European guy. It's not a European market guy who's a market guy who is a South American, right? I can give you a recent name like Arturo Vidal was a bust in South America.
Mm-hmm.
Felipe Anderson from Napoli, he hasn't shown anything good. It's bad.
West Ham
But
legend.
This is what I'll say about the Neymar move, right? So Neymar, from everything that I've heard in the Brazilian media, so I'm going to be quoting them a lot, and I promise I'm not going to talk here. Guys, just cut me off. Neymar made the wrong decision, one by going to PSG and then going to Al Hilal, always looking for that money. Right?
No.
He should have kept in European football. He should have stayed at Barcelona. He should have kept playing at the highest level. You go to Al Hilal, they have all these foreign players. They have that cap. He had more, the statistic, he had more goal participations than actual games played for Al Hilal, even though they were playing all that money. But why did he chose Santos, right? So Santos, in a way, he called it an emotional move because it's back to the team that formed him, but it's the rational move. So there's been thoughts about him playing for Flamengo, but even realized, and Flamengo kind of said the same thing, you don't have space to play here with us. Santos is coming back to the Serie A after their first ever relegation. It is a team in financial dire. Nobody cares about Santos anymore. Pele, Neymar, all those guys, it's nothing. It's a shell of itself. They were trying to rebuild this year, right? Back in the Serie A, getting a guy here, getting a guy there. but also Santos's youth system is not producing what they were producing before. They don't have guys in their U20 and U17 that goes like, okay, that's the next guy. Other teams do. Palmeiras does, São Paulo does, Flamengo does. So you go to Santos, one, they're gonna treat you like a king, right? Two, the team is not thinking about the youth system. They need the money. They need the cash. This is gonna attract worldwide attraction, right? Everybody has their eyes. They're talking like the national games that are televised every week. Nobody was just watching Santos even before they were relegated. Nobody cared. Santos is a small team in São Paulo. Now you do that, and then all of a sudden you bring in Neymar. There's TV, there's parties, there's other players that you're like they were able to convince David Washington to come on a loan from Chelsea. Other players, they're hoping that other players can surround that. It's a 6 month low risk move for Santos. It's only 6 months, right? But there's also this section of Brazil that really thinks that Neymar can lead Brazil to the promised land in World Cup 2026, which I'm not one of those people. I
Yep.
am not. But honestly, Santos is probably the only team that will give him a chance to play, regardless if he's in form or not. And that happens in Brazilian soccer because of your name, not because of how well you're playing. So when you take all those factors and combine it, it's a good signing for Santos. It's a good signing for Neymar. I think he's going to play midweek this week. We don't have Serie A right now. We have state championships, Ethan. If you ever want to talk to me about the Brazilian calendar, how crazy it is, we have state championship. I'm talking about just one state plays a
Right.
championship. It's crazy. So I'm not sold on the rebirth of the great Neymar, but it's good for Brazilian soccer. You get one of their Diaz back. It's 6 months. The hope is that they sign him until the World Cup, and he gets the form. He's gonna get the opportunity. It doesn't matter who the hell number 10 win. Who the hell is coming up behind it? Neymar's gonna play because Neymar sells tickets and they sell jerseys, and Santos needs the money.
Do you think that there's an element because I've seen Brazilian soccer, I really started watching soccer in about 2012 time, and in that time,
Hmm.
you kind of see the duality of Brazil where when they're doing well and they're playing well, Brazil is just the most united footballing nation. They're a beautiful footballing nation, and it's just absolutely amazing to see. You can tell
Hmm.
that all the players love playing with each other. You can see, I mean, around the 2014 World Cup, you see, the nation uniting behind the team. But then you also see the other part of it of where when it goes bad, the nation can also turn their back just as quickly when it's like we aren't producing trophy winners. We have Fred or Joe up front or whoever, and we've lost that Jogo Bonito. Even Ronaldinho coming out recently being like, oh yeah, even Vinny doesn't have that Jogo Bonito type of thing and stuff like that. Do you think there's an element that might put extra pressure on Neymar playing back domestically in his home country, being like you said, he's going to play regardless because it's Santos and they don't really have any other option. But from within the country, outside of just Santos, do you think other teams or, like you said, even the people that are expecting him to lead to the promised land here in about a year and a half, do you think there could be like, oh, Neymar isn't that anymore. Neymar isn't the son that we were promised. Do you think there's some more pressure actually coming home rather than, playing in like a Chicago Fire?
There, no, because Brazilians tend to care more about their own teams than the national team.
Okay.
And that has been a shift in the last 20 years because Brazilians like to watch European soccer. They understand that it's a better quality. Brazil is trying to close that gap, and I think they have, right? So a lot of Brazilians, right? That includes me sometimes because of the Brazilian calendar. Sometimes we get players called up to like national teams, like Flamengo
Oh yeah.
loses to Uruguay, players to Brazil, Chile, and we're like, screw it. We rather him playing here and playing well here. Screw the seleção. The pressure has already been there for Neymar. We saw that into like 2018. It wasn't really his fault. I mean, it was good old Fred. Never mind. But um, I see the pressure is there, but I think people just lost hope in Neymar overall. This move is more for Neymar than the Brazilian fans. Neymar, I'll say this: Neymar needs Santos more now than Santos really needs Neymar, or the Brazilian soccer really needs Neymar. It's nice. People are gonna see an idol that that they grew up watching. But I'm telling you this right now, just because he's at Santos, it doesn't really change much. Santos is gonna compete to not go and get relegated again.
Can you, Johnny? Can you kind of tell us? Because you obviously have the finger on the pulse of the Brazilian, both the Brazilian opinion, but also you have a good knowledge base for yourself of the sport. What is going to be like the first sentence of? I mean, let's just assume nothing crazy happens. They don't win the World Cup in 26, or if they do, Neymar's not a big part of it or whatever. What is going to be like kind of the collective thought or like the first sentence of Neymar's career, when we're talking about him 10 years from now?
He was a really good dribbler.
Damn. That's it. I'm not even criticizing, or I'm not even saying you're wrong. I'm just
no Ballon d'Or.
That's what it is.
No,
Yep.
because these are the guys that we need to stack them up against. And I know, Ethan, you said you started watching football in 2012. I started watching football, grew up right in Brazil. Like, football was you took it to 94 team. Look, Romario, Cafu, Tafarel. And some of those guys were not even better than Neymar, but they're considered greats of soccer. Look at the old 06 teams. Rivaldo, Cafu, Roberto Carlos, Ronaldo, Ronaldinho. And then he had the balls to say in a podcast, okay, in the 02 team, it was Ronaldo, Ronaldinho, and Rivaldo. Are you better than any of those guys? Who would you take out? He's like, I'll take out Rivaldo. Rivaldo's the Ballon d'Or winner. Okay, he actually has won the Best Player of the Year award. Like, you're comparing Neymar to greatness, and they have titles. What does Neymar have? Neymar has been Messi's little brother all his career, and then he tried to be his own man at PSG, and then he became Mbappe's little brother. So what does Neymar have? I'm just being out. Maybe 2014 could have been different if he played against Germany. No, they would have lost that game. Maybe not 7-1. I mean, hopefully not 7-1, right? Because that would have probably put the coffin in his career. But what is Neymar? He's a really good dribbler. Jogo Bonito, and this is the thing about Jogo Bonito. There's a fight in Brazil right now about Jogo Bonito and adapting to tactics, right? Because what we've seen is that Europeans play really good tactics, and it neutralizes the Jogo Bonito. How can we infuse both? It's really hard. And Brazil is kind of losing itself, that we're producing more wingers that play in a system like Pep, and we're kind of losing the Jogo Bonito. But how effective is that Jogo Bonito if we play in Spain and can't win? If we play in England and can't win? We can't. We're having trouble beating Peru and freaking Venezuela, man.
Yeah, I mean, me and Chad, I know we don't really, I mean, obviously we've never talked about football before, but me and Chad are very aligned with that. When it's like, yeah, it's cute to be like, oh, back in 2002, Ronaldinho could do a rainbow flick and it would work, 1 out of 10 times. The one time it works, it looks amazing, but that means you're losing the ball 9 times out of 10 and stuff like that. And in the modern game, you can't really afford to have that. When you have, in attack, there are teams that legitimately play like a 2-2-6 in attack. And if you're in a 2-2-6 and you have the ball on the left and you try to do some insane skill move, lose it, now they're 4-on-2 the other way. I'm not saying that like the game has just progressed, like is a trillion times better than it ever has been, but it's like you said, it's different. Like it was at that time, it was probably very legitimate, very like 4-4-3-3 or 4-4-2, where it's like
nobody pressed back in the days. Nobody pressed. I can tell you that right now.
It's like as soon as we win the ball back, it's ours for the next 2 minutes until we decide to lose it. and where I'm able to go one-on-one at my defender, and if I lose it, that's fine. I'll walk back to the halfway line and wait for them to give me back the ball again. And now it's like, I mean, shit, even guys like, we saw Messi, Mbappe, and Neymar, and what was the first thing on every rational fan's mind? Damn, who's going to defend? It wasn't, oh my God, three of the best players in the world are playing together. It was, this isn't going to work because these guys don't play defense. That's how much the game has changed. You just talked about that front line of Rivaldo, Romario, and Ronaldinho. If that was a front line now, that would be the exact same question. It'd be like, damn, how are these guys going to defend if three of these guys decide not to defend? Because at that time you could. So do you think that there's like some impossible standard that Neymar is held to since he's playing, one, in the era of Messi and Ronaldo, and two, he's playing in a much more tactically based era than, those greats that you mentioned that came before him?
I think it doesn't help the situation when Neymar has talked about quitting and Neymar is like partying after a loss at the World Cup or something like that. That plays a huge factor in Brazilian fans' minds. You see like organized fans uh like crashing parties because they see a player there and they just lost a game. So that guy can't enjoy his life.
Yeah.
Like William talked about this. Like I couldn't go and take my family to eat at a restaurant after a loss because fans would show up. Start demanding like, why are you having fun? Why are you eating lunch? And Neymar never wanted to be held to that standard. So that doesn't help him. Unrealistic. Is it unrealistic to ask such a talented squad to make a semifinal of a World Cup? Is it unrealistic to have such a talented squad be more competitive against European competition? And I know you, Ethan. I listen to you guys a lot. You really don't watch a lot of like the international soccer. And it's kind of hard here to watch like the European. I watch the Euro Cup. I really like, but is it that much to ask from Neymar? At least be close and at least show some remorse when you're not it. Or there's always an excuse. Like 22 was kind of like crap, man. Maybe if we beat Croatia, we have a magical moment against Argentina. But like,
That one was insanity because Neymar actually had the moment too. The moment that
yes,
we've been waiting for
yes,
for so long. It's like he's going to have that moment where we say, this is the best player in the world, or this is this guy, or this is an icon of the Seleção. And then he had it. He scored the goal with 2 minutes left in extra time or whatever it was. And I'll never forget where I was. I was at Schooners having a drink, and I will look up and I'm like, oh my God, that was Neymar's moment right there. 117th minute, scored the winner. And then they literally just went down and equalized right after that. And I was like, wow.
yeah. And Neymar was like looking at Fred because they have the lip reading.
Yeah.
Why did you go up?
Yeah.
Why did you go up? And I guess that's not his fault. But however, just going back to the standard is not unreal. It's unrealistic at this point. I think, right? It's for Neymar to be that protagonist. We need to move on, and unfortunately, the reason why we won't move on, and I'll say this: Brazil still hires Brazilian coaches to be the coaches for the Brazilian national team. They refuse to hire foreigners. Where the best coaches in Brazil today are from Portugal. They're not Brazilians. The guys in the top tier are Portuguese coaches. The one that's coming up is Felipe Luis of Flamengo, who kind of skipped the line and is getting his shot. Felipe Luis from Atletico Madrid, that guy. But if we're being surpassed, Brazil is being surpassed by the European style of football, where you got to play with a little bit of tactics, and we still hold on to the old school thinking of Brazilian coaches, that's not going to help. That jogo bonito is just not as bonito anymore, especially since the guys that are playing in the national team are not playing the jogo bonito in Europe, right?
Yep.
Maybe Vinny is more creative, but your Guimarães is your man. He didn't even put Paquetá, João Gomes.
Like even Rafinha, who's like I would say a really has had an awesome year. He doesn't do it in the way of like a traditional Brazilian guy. Like he's just more of a direct
Power.
Powerful, tactical, can kind of shoot from any area. Isn't a guy who's going to isolate and dribble against you 1v1 or anything like that.
Yep.
So even the guys that are producing are doing it in a different way.
And we can go into a whole podcast about the Brazilian national team. I'll tell you. Look, I'm gonna ask
We
you
had to clear
guys.
2 more hours. We had to clear 2 more hours.
Hey, if you guys do an episode on the Club World Cup, I'm just gonna sell myself. If you guys do an episode on the Club World Cup, please invite me. I would love to give you guys my South American perspective on it. It's a big thing for us, not for Ethan because of the Prem. I got you. And the game is about to start. Hey, Man City, Arsenal is not the biggest game today. Today, Brazilian Super Cup, right? Our community shield. Botafogo and Flamengo at 2. That's all I'm saying, man. I'm sorry.
I don't know. I always have sort of held something against Botafogo because they might have the worst club badge in all of world football. It is. It is actually insane that someone made that and was like, "Yeah, I'm done." It looked like it was due at 11:59, and it was like 11:57. They're like, "This is all I have for you. Here you go."
It was the 1900s, early 1900s when that shit. It's been there forever. Maybe they should tune it up a little bit.
All right, well. Gosh, man, this was such an awesome episode. We're definitely going to have to get John back on. A lot of NFL, but also a little bit of Brazilian national team. So the best of, I guess, both worlds of the Glue Guys podcast we got in today. A little bit of world football and then some American football as well. So, John, again, really, really appreciate you coming out. We're going to have to get you back on. And we've been talking about this for months and months now. This is kind of a throwback to the Lazy Boys. So... A little reunion here, and without further ado, appreciate you guys tuning in to episode 24, and we will see you next week.
Thank you, guys.